Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everybody's surviving all this crazy weather that we've been having down here. I think we probably were fortunate today. I think all the bad stuff was either north of us or a little bit south of us. But prayers to all those who have been affected by those nasty storms that occurred earlier today and still pretty much occurring over further east into like South Carolina, North Carolina, and still maybe a few parts of Georgia. So yeah, I think we did dodge a bullet on that, which was good for us, but I just want to be thoughtful for all those who have been affected by that. I know that's scary. But anyway, what I want to do today is bring you my game analysis of the new season that has just begun in the Lichess 45+45 league. And this was played on Thursday, I do believe. And my opponent is GnarlyGoat, rated 1972, and he is playing white. Alright, and this game gets pretty crazy rather quick, and it's very complicated. It's taken me a few days to go over all the lines and variations, and just going over all the little details that my opponent missed, that I missed. This game is just complicated from the get-go. But let's get down and dirty with it. Alright, so my opponent opens up with c4, and this is the English opening, and I don't know hardly any theory with it. I may have played it as white maybe a few times, like way back in the day, but nowadays not so much. I don't see it too often. I know there are a few players in the league that do play it, and I decided here to just stick to my guns and play f5 and do a Dutch approach with it, stick to what I know kind of deal. However, there are several options that black has to deal with white's opening move, and the first one is of course e5, which takes control of some central squares, since white is going to be trying to take control over d5, b5, and so on. And from there, play can pretty much kind of develop knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, e3, or white can go for a fianchetto look and go this way, castle kingside, and maybe play d3 and e4. There's several ways white can do this. Alright, there's also, there's also black can try c5 and take on a symmetrical approach to white's opening moves, such as, let's go g3 maybe? Bishop b7, bishop g2, bishop b7, knight c3. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff here that both sides have tried and are very popular. All sorts of different theories and whatnot. Black could also try c6, which I think has been played numerous of times, as well as e5 and c5. And basically the point is maybe we can transpose to a Slav defense, where black plays d5 after white plays d4, knight f6, and so on. So there's so much going on from the beginning here, and that's just kind of the gist of it. I'm not going to go into all the crazy details because there's tons and tons of books on that, and I'm no expert on that material. So I stuck with my guns and played f5, hoping to get typical Dutch setup, which I'm most familiar with as black. All right, G3, and white kind of sticks to the same idea. He's an English player, so he's going to play what he knows, and so forth. So he's going to come in with bishop G2, and maybe we can transpose. You never know. At this early stage, it can go anywhere. So you just got to be prepared a little bit and put your pieces on good squares, and use the ideas that you already know for the position, and just keep trucking along and get through this opening phase so we can get to the middle game. So knight f6, bishop g2, e5. Here I'm claiming central space. Knight c3, d6, d3, bishop e7. These are just normal developing moves, so nothing fiery is going on here. But here's where it starts to get a little hectic. E4. White is attacking my central pawn structure, and now there are all sorts of little nuances that can go on from this position with this setup. Black has a pretty good pawn structure, but so does white. So it's it's pretty even. The computer seems to like, when I was looking over this, the computer likes just knight f3 and castling kingside before pushing e4. But e4 is still good. Knight c6, just developing. Knight ge2. Castles, and here white plays d4. And here's the beginning of all the madness. I think here the best thing for white to do is to just go ahead and castle, get his king over into safety, develop his rook, maybe swing it to e1 or d1, and go from there. But now that he's played d4, the opening is, there's a lot of tension in the center, and there are now so many different ways that can capture. You now have to calculate things like f takes e4, d takes e4, knight takes e4, and what happens with all these exchanges. But white's king is still in the center, so it does make things a little uneasy. Another line in the game that I was thinking white could try is f4, and I think it leads to equalization. The position becomes pretty stable after many exchanges. After e takes f4, knight takes f4, pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes. And this looks pretty even for both sides. White might be a little bit better. Maybe black could play knight to e5 or bishop to f5 if he really wants to exchange more pieces. So yeah, I think with f4 you get more of a even position, but with d4 it becomes very, very interesting. Okay, so in the game I took on e4. I also looked at knight takes e4, which is pretty similar to what I was calculating, and because after knight, no, that's not what I was thinking. What was it? Well, yeah, I was thinking knight takes e4, but knight takes d4 is pretty interesting itself. After knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and c6. This is I had thought about this position in the game, but I didn't like the setup with my d6 pawn sitting like this. I figured it might become a weakness for white to try to exploit. So I didn't want to put myself in this situation. The computer seems to think it's fine. However, I didn't want to put myself in that situation. Alright, so now sorry, I'm going through this with my notes since there's so much going on, and not to confuse myself in all the madness. So knight takes e4 is possible as well. After knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and yeah, bishop g4. And here it still looks pretty even. H3 and bishop f3. Bishop takes, rook takes, and this looks pretty interesting, and it could probably be evaluated a little bit further or calculated a little bit further, but I think it looks fine for both sides. Alright, in the game, white castles, and I think at this point in time, it's just a waste of time, since he's already spent the time to play d4 and to open up the center. Alright, so instead of castling, oh good, yeah, you found the patch. Instead of castling, I think white should just play d5. And I thought this is what he was going to do. And black can do two things with the knight since white is tickling it. You can go to a5. And after b3, still a little unclear. I think it's still even. White will eventually get his pawn back. But I think the simpler thing to do is just redirect the knight and play knight to b8. And afterwards, white can just take, and we could go from there. Maybe bishop f5 or bishop g4. Play can continue from there, but at this point, it looks pretty even. Alright, however, I did not take advantage of the fact that white wasted tempo by castling. So I played queen e8, and this is inaccurate on my part. Instead of queen e8, I should have played the very annoying bishop to g4, which develops my light squared bishop, which is sometimes hard to do in the Dutch, and get that bishop into the game. But it also creates this nice pin on the position. And now knight to d4 is a very big threat that white must deal with. For example, so the only way to really deal with it would be pawn takes, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes, and this looks very good for black. He has control over the d file, and even he may have some ideas of penetrating the second rank. For example, bishop to g5. Maybe we can just force the trade here. Maybe something like that. But anyway, I think this here looks pretty good for black. So I think white has to be pretty careful about what he does. But however, I did not play bishop g4 and putting that tension on white and forcing him to make a decision on what he wants to do. Instead, I played queen e8, which pretty much gives the move back to white. And my idea was with queen e8 was in the Dutch, this can be a very resourceful move because not only you're looking at queen to h5, and you're going to try to get things going on the king side and try to break down white's king and his defenders. Alright, so after queen e8, giving the move back to white, we have d takes e5. But I think knight takes e4 is just more simpler for white, because after bishop f5, yeah, knight takes, bishop takes, and it looks pretty balanced. Maybe a slight edge to black, but I think things are now starting to relax a little bit in the center, and later on it could go either way with all the piece maneuvering and stuff like that. But I do like my bishops. My bishop pair looks pretty solid compared to his. This bishop is a little bit of annoying here, but I think that'd probably be the better choice for white. So after d takes e5, knight takes e5, knight to d5. This looks a little weird. I know he's targeting c7 and potentially forking my rook and queen. However, this is not that big of a threat, as I'll show in a little bit. I got too many pieces that can potentially come over here to the king side and harass white. I think the better idea would have just been to play knight takes e4 yet again. After knight takes e4. Yeah, I think this just looks okay for white. So anyway, after knight d5, I spent some time here looking at knight to f3 check, but it's not the best move. The computer suggests c6, and then the knight probably just needs to trade off here. Yeah, and the reason for that is, which is what I was going to explain earlier, that knight to c7 is not that big of a threat, forking the queen and the rook, because after knight to c7, queen to h5, and let's say the knight does take, now I have bishop to g4, sorry, and we have this huge pin that white has to deal with in his position. And I got some ideas of coming here, and so black has plenty of compensation, so it's very uncomfortable for white to deal with. But knight f3 check, so it's a very complicated position regardless, but I wanted to make white feel uncomfortable and uneasy, even though I didn't see that c6 was slightly better. Here he plays king to h1, which is a little inaccurate. I think white should just take, and then knight to f4 seems like a pretty decent chance. But I can see why it would look uncomfortable. According to my notes, just take here first, and then after queen takes, knight to f4. And I think things are a little bit unclear. This pawn will probably drop in a little bit. Black still needs to develop. We got all these open files. I got a half open file. So yeah, it's a little unclear at this point. So maybe bishop taking the knight was a little bit better than what he played. So king h1, bishop d8, a very resourceful move in my pocket, defending the c7 fork and just kind of getting out of the way in case he wants to trade his knight for my bishop, because these bishops can come in handy in these types of situations. And here he plays knight to e4. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with that. I know he's adding another attacker to the f3 square so he can regain his pawn. But the computer thinks white's best try is knight to g1. I think this is a much more difficult nut to crack for black. So yeah, that is an interesting line. But knight to e4, and now I played bishop to g4, and the purpose of this was just to be adding another defender to f3, and as well making the situation a little more uneasy for white in case I have some discovery ideas, but that's not really the case. I mean, the knight can't really go anywhere to attack, maybe h2. That's probably about it. However, the best option for black was to just make moves to where white needs to retreat a little bit, maybe after c6, knight back to c3, and even pushing this knight away, making more and more pushes and positional gains. So yeah, I think black has a very, very comfortable position here. But after bishop g4, he just plays h3 and bishop to f5. I think the computer, when I was looking at it earlier, I think the computer likes bishop to d7. But bishop f5, and now white takes on f3. So he takes f3, knight takes f6, rook takes f6, queen to d5 check. This is another inaccuracy by white. I think the main move was knight to d5. No, excuse me. Rook to e1. Oh, where am I on my notes? I'm sorry. See, I don't do this a whole lot, so you'll have to forgive me if I lose my place in my thought process, because I'm more of like, I gotta write stuff down. I don't want to sit here and stare at the board the entire time trying to gather my senses while I do this recording. Alright, so rook e1, queen to f7, now queen takes f3, c6, and the position is pretty sharp. Maybe there's some tactical ideas with playing g5 if I can get my bishop out of the way and exploit this pin. f2 looks a little weak. So yeah, there's some stuff going on here. But yeah, after queen d5, I decide, well, I guess I'll offer a queen trade. A queen trade looks good for me, yeah. However, there's a better idea that I didn't see at all, and that was to just play rook to f7. And the idea behind rook to f7 is that if he takes on b7, then we have bishop to f6. Where am I? Sorry, lost my notes again. Yeah. King to g1, and white definitely doesn't want to take the pawn on f3 because that just runs into this nice little tactical idea, and white would just lose his queen, so we don't want to do that. And then so what do we do here? Yeah, king to g1, sorry, I already had that move down. c6, queen to b3, and black is pretty much dominating the board here. Bishop F E5 bishop. You know, there's all sorts of stuff that I could probably come up with even further. But yeah, black is absolutely dominating the board right now. All of his pieces are really active. The queen can come into the game at any point. This rook can come over. You know, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that was a computer line. But after queen takes b7, rook to c8, queen takes f3, and now in this position I knew tactics were coming up on the board. This was a slight error on White's part. Knight d5 would have been a little bit better, especially after bishop takes h3, knight takes f6 check, bishop takes f6, rook to e1, bishop to e5, and even though black is down the exchange, black has plenty of compensation for it. His two bishops dominate the board, and White's king is feeling very loose, so he has great chances to exploit the weak king. So yeah, this is perfectly fine for black, even though he's down the rook, or down the exchange, sorry. So yeah, this wouldn't be a problem at all for black. After queen takes f3, bishop takes h3, and g5 is a very big threat that white has to deal with, so he gets out of the way with queen to b7. And here I make the mistake of queen takes c4, and white has a very, very nice move to draw. And you might see it, you might not. I didn't see it. When I was playing the game, I was very shocked that this led to a draw. I thought that it was probably winning for me at some point. I knew it would take a little work, but it's actually a forced draw. White did not see it and played bishop to e3. However, the correct move would have been knight takes h3, after which queen takes f1, excuse me, knight to g1, and this surprisingly holds. Rook to f5, threatening mate on h5, but white has g5, g4, and then after queen takes, definitely not rook takes, because of bishop to e3 kind of kills it for black, so that wouldn't be good. So queen takes f2, g takes f5, queen to here, check, and you know, white's king is going to just go all over the place, and black is just going to chase it all the way around the board pretty much, and it's just going to be a never-ending cycle of draws, of checks. Black doesn't have the material on that side, on the king side of the board, in order to deliver a mate. And you know, this rook is hanging. Afterwards, the bishop will be loose. There's some back rank issues for black. So one misstep for black could really cost him the game. So black would be forced to just check white to death and just take the draw. However, on bishop e3, which is what was played in the game, this allowed me to think it was a great idea to take on f4. However, I think I played that move pretty quickly, but just take the rook. If you just take the rook, it's fine. Then if the queen takes on c8, now you can take on f. And the reason for that is if the pawn takes, there's a quick little checkmate. Or if the king goes to here, then that's mate. So white doesn't really have the time to take on f4. Alright, so I missed that, and I just played rook takes f4. And here he played the losing move, the final blunder of the game, despite all of our back and forth, little inaccuracies here and there. It would have just been better for white to take on f4, and then after bishop takes f1, rook takes f1, then the queen needs to go back to e6 to defend my own rook, because if queen takes here, then we're just in another draw, and then black's just going to move his queen up and down and check white to death, and it's just not going to go anywhere. So the queen would have to go back to e6. However, after rook f to c1, black just simply checks the white king, puts the queen on pre, and white would be forced to take, and after takes, black is up a full piece. Not only that, he has the double bishops and a very active rook. This rook can come into the game at any moment. The king is going to come marching in, and it would just be a very easy win after that for black. So white did miss a good chance. I guess I got a little bit lucky that he missed that forced draw. So that was good. So yeah, here after this move, white resigned. So yeah, this was just a crazy game that got out of hand really quick with the d4 move on this move right here. This is where it pretty much gets all kinds of complicated. White spends a tempo by castling, but I just give it back and should have just played bishop to g4, putting tension on the king side and the pin, which would have been nice. So I missed that opportunity there. After takes, knight f3, missed the chance to just go ahead and play c6 and ignore the fact that that's a fork, because there's just too much stuff coming here to harass white. So yeah, I mean, that was it. So a lot of crazy stuff going on, and it took me quite a long time just to go through all the different variations and 5 pages worth of notes just so I could do this video. So yeah, very crazy. Just a lot of stuff going on, just a lot of back and forth, inaccurate play, and finally the missed opportunity by white to force a draw by pretty much non-stop checks. But got lucky that this just wins right here at the end. So yeah, it was a fun game. But a nice win to start the season off right. I play again on Saturday morning against someone from Greece, and I'll be playing black yet again. I seem to play black a lot. I need the white pieces at some point. So yeah, very good start. Our team ended up winning that week. I don't think our teams had a game yet. I think most of our games are going to be on the weekend. So yeah, we'll see how that goes, and hopefully we can keep the pace going, even though it's just week 2. So yeah, hope everybody's safe. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked it, even though it was kind of on my end, because I'm not a public speaker all that often. So yeah, but it's always fun to do these videos because it helps me to go over the games and take a look at all the minute details that could have happened and all the miscalculations that I could have had or my opponent had, or something that I could have tried differently. And it helps me spot errors that I can improve on my game. So yeah, this was very complicated, complex, very quick, but very fun too. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and probably do another video after Saturday's game. Don't know what day it is, but you'll see it when you see it. Alright, thanks guys, be safe, take care.